In this video, we're going to take a look at a chapter inside of a Brian Tracy book called Maximum Achievement. Now, of all of his books, and he's written over 84 of them, this one is his absolute top bestseller. And he has a chapter in here that talks about his system for goal achievement. So I thought we'd go over it together. So here we have his 12-step system for goal achievement. So the first step is to have desire. So he calls this the motivational force to overcome fear and inertia. So I want to share with you a quote here about desire where he calls it an intense burning desire for a specific goal enables you to rise above your fears and move forward over any obstacles. So if you got desire to accomplish that goal, that's going to be a good step for making your goals come to life. Next one is belief. And in here he says, you must absolutely believe that it is possible to achieve your goal. And then he says, because belief is the catalyst that activates your mental powers. It is important that your goals be realistic. So in here he's talking about where he was making $40,000 a year, and then his goal was to make $400,000 the next year. But the problem is that he didn't actually believe he could do it, so he didn't. And so he instead made his goal from 40,000 to 60,000, which is a 50% increase. And of course, before you knew it, he actually conquered that goal quite easily, but he wouldn't have done it if he didn't have that step of belief. The next step, he says, is to write the goal down. So I'm going to share with you a quote where he says, one of the most powerful of all methods for implanting a goal into your subconscious mind is to write it out clearly, vividly, in detail, exactly as you would see in reality. And then he says, don't worry about how the goal is going to be achieved. When you discipline yourself to write your goals down, the very act overrides your failure mechanism and turns on your success mechanism onto full power. And then the next step, he says, is to figure out how will you benefit. And this is where he writes, your reasons why must be uplifting and inspiring. And then he shares a quote by Friedrich Nietzsche where he says, man can bear any what if he has a big enough why. I want to share with you one little example about this. I had a friend who was smoking and she wanted to quit and she kept failing. And I said to her, what is it about your life that you really, really love? And what she loved was spending time with her grandkids. And I said to her, well, if you quit smoking, do you see how that can enable you to spend more time with your grandkids? And of course, that was her why, and she hasn't smoked in the last few years. So having a why is definitely a very important backbone to making a goal come to life. The next step, he says, is to analyze your starting point. And this is where he says, the clearer you are about where you are coming from and where you are going, the more likely it is that you will end up where you want to be. And the example he gives here is about, let's say, weight loss. In order to lose weight, you'd have to know how much you weigh right now. Or another thing is, let's say you wanted to be able to improve your finances. Well, one starting point would be to know where you're starting from. So having a starting point enunciated and articulated is very important for goal achievement. Another step, he says, is to create a deadline. And he says, when you set a deadline for a tangible goal, you program it into your mind and activate your subconscious forcing system, which ensures that you accomplish your goal by that date. And one important point to think about this is that, what if we miss our deadline, right? What if we're supposed to have something done by June 20th and, we missed the deadline? And he says, well, just very simply, pick up the deadline and move it forward. So just being able to change the deadline is a good thing, but at least have that line in the sand so you know what that finish line is that you're heading towards. And he also says to make it a little easier, to break it into sub-goals. So I think that's some pretty good advice. The next step, he says, is to identify whatever obstacles you might have. So I'm going to quote him here where he says, list all the obstacles between you and the goal. And he says, is there anything about myself that I will have to change or any ability that I will have to develop in order to achieve my goal? In other words, what is my limiting step? So let's say you wanted to build an app. So maybe one of those limiting steps would be having to learn how to do C# or some kind of computer programming. Or maybe you wanted to go on a big trip, but you didn't have your passport. Well, getting that done would certainly be an important step because without it, you can't really leave the country. Another step, he says, is to identify the information for your goal. So here he says, in this information age, talents, skills, abilities, and experience. This is what he's talking about. So he says, what is the most important information or ability required to achieve your goal? So let's say we wanted to get more fit. It'd be good to understand what are some of the activities and exercises to be able to achieve that goal. Should it be weightlifting? Should it be running? Should it be jogging? Or maybe you wanted to be able to learn some kind of new computer program, Photoshop, or how to write JavaScript or whatever. It'd be good to understand what kind of additional skills you need to be able to make those kinds of steps come to fruition. Now, the next step is about identifying the people whose help and cooperation is required. So this might be family, you might have to borrow some seed capital from them. Maybe it's your boss because you need some time off. Maybe it's bankers because they need to help finance your dream, or maybe you need more customers, right? So the step he says is to organize who these people are and put them into a priority order so that you can figure out what has to be done to be able to build those relationships that enable the achievement of those goals. And the next step, he says, is to make a plan. Now, out of all of them, I think this is the easiest because what make a plan is really about taking the answers from all those previous steps and just combining them all together, and that's going to be the plan. So in other words, figuring out what is the most important thing to do. Then you ask yourself, what's the second most important? And then you keep asking down the line until you've listed every activity based on its value to the completed goal. And the next step after you've got all your plan laid out is to use visualization. And this is where he says, create a clear mental picture of your goal as it would appear if it were already achieved. And he says your subconscious mind is activated by pictures. And if you look at any kind of Olympic achievers or people that have won gold medals and done all kinds of wonderful achievements, one thing they've all done is they've made a picture in their mind. They practiced what it would look like if that goal had already been achieved. So this has got to be a super strong point that's definitely got to be mandatory. And now the last step, and I think this is a very, very important, which is to decide to never quit. And he says to back your goals and plans with persistence and determination. And he says, as long as you refuse to quit, you must eventually be successful. All right, so let's put all this together on one big page so we can see all these steps together. So we have desire, belief, write it down. How will you benefit? Analyze it, give it a deadline, figure out the obstacles, what info you need, who can help you out, and then you combine all that together to make a plan. Then you make a visualization of it so you know what that finished end goal looks like. And then the last step is to put your head down and get to work working on it. All right, so I hope that helps to give you some clarity as to what's required for making a goal come to life. And I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. And if you're also interested in checking out Brian Tracy's products, he has a course called Maximum Productivity, which is worth checking out, and I'll leave a link for it down below. All right, this is DS Yvonne at reprogrammingmind.com. Bye for now.